I'm Karen MacNeil, author of the Wine Bible and editor of the digital newsletter Wine Speed. And this is winespeed.com's People to Know, insider interviews with the most fascinating and important people in the wine business. And today we're talking with Oz Clarke, the British writer, television personality, and well-known authority on wine. Oz's unpretentious style has made him one of the most recognized wine critics in Great Britain today. Oz has written numerous books on wine, including The History of Wine in 100 Bottles, Bordeaux, Grapes and Wines with the writer Margaret Rand, World of Wine, Wine by the Glass, and very most recently, Oz Clarke, On Wine, Your Global Wine Companion. Prior to wine writing, Oz was a full-time stage actor, and he appeared in many West End hit shows such as Evita and Sweeney Todd, and was touring with the Royal Shakespeare Company for several years. He's made frequent appearances on BBC TV and radio, earning awards for his informative and entertaining wine broadcasts. Oz has also won numerous wine writing awards, including the Glenfiddich, André Simon, Louis Roederer, Wine Guild, James Beard, Julia Child, World Food Media, and Lanson Awards. Oz, you are knocking it out of the park, my friend. Listen to all those awards. Oh my God.
This is a Billy Bonds moment for me, straight out.
Well, I want to welcome, first of all, and I want to start by asking you if you remember your very first glass of wine.
Yeah, because I started drinking when I was 3. We were having a picnic by the side of the river near Cambridge, and my brother was drowning in the river, and my mother was having hysterics. Obviously, my father was trying to rescue him, and I saw this bottle of Damson wine sitting on the picnic rug, and well, nobody was looking, so I drank it. My brother did survive, by the way. I very nearly didn't, because my father pulled out this one bedraggled son from the river. Just saw his other son lying pink and comatose on the picnic rug. He saw the empty Damson wine bottle, and he picked me up by the ankles, and he whacked me in the stomach. So all the Damson wine exited my person, whence it entered my person. And that really put me off drinking till I was about 18. But I tell you what it did do. It made me very fond of wines that taste of damsons. So I've always been rather fond of Malbec and Argentine Malbec and things like that. And of course, I also know that that wines that taste of damsons taste just as good on the way back up as they did on the way down. It's important. So that was it. First taste of wine, Damson wine.
Oh my
God. Real wine, much later.
Yeah.
First taste of real wine was
you
almost
came crashing in to the wine business, it appears. You know, I've always wanted to ask you this and never have, but now's the time. So how did you come to be called Oz?
Well, this is, it's not often the chap can say, I'm really pleased with what happens in the showers at my boys only school when I was about 12, but I am. Because I used to play cricket, and we were a choir school, and we could hardly raise a team, and hardly anyone except me was remotely interested in standing there whacking balls around. And so the local schools would kill us. I mean, they would see the choir boys all coming out virtually in our cassocks and surplices and standing there like this, and some great beefy beast would hurl the ball down at us. I remember we were at one dreadfully rough school we were playing, and we were about 4 wickets down for no runs or something, and I was sent in, and the headmaster was like this, one of these kind of guys, and I just thought, he's going to bowl at my head, I'll whack him to the boundary. That's like shoving it straight over third base every time. Hey, you want to bowl at me again? Third base. You want to bowl at me? Third base. You want to bowl at me? Third base. Straight into San Francisco Bay. And I did it 6 times in a row. And then he bowled at me again a few minutes later, and I did it another 2 or 3 times. And then, of course, he threw a ball that was at the wicket, and I missed it, and I was out. So instead of being 4, this is, if people who don't understand cricket, I'm sorry about this, but, you know, we were no runs for half the people in hospital, I suspect, by then, with broken jaws and blood pouring from their heads. And I came out afterwards, and the headmaster was apoplectic. He said, "You descended to the level of the gutter. I told you to keep a straight bat. And I said, if I keep a straight bat, I'd have a broken nose. I whacked it over the fence. And the reason for that, I went back to the school, and the people who weren't still alive in the school, we were getting done after our show, and they all started saying, you played like an Australian, you played like an Australian, because the Australians are the best cricketers in the world, the most competitive. And my father had always taken me to watch the Australians play, and he'd said, never let anyone bully you. Someone bowls your head, watch the ball, whack it to the boundary. Someone bowls the head, watch the ball, whack it to the boundary. So when I got this great beefy bully hurling balls on my head, straight over the fence every time. And so they started calling me Aussie because I played cricket like an Australian. And that's that. And everyone says, but is he Australian? No, I'm not. I'm an Irish Englishman, Irish Welsh Englishman. Nothing to do with Australia at all. And because I was tremendously keen on Australian wines, and when I started trying to change the way wine was in Britain, especially when I was doing my weekly television show, and we just thought, we've got to democratize this awful class-ridden world of wine that is a curse in Britain. There's 50 million people out there who don't think that they should drink wine because wine's not for the likes of them. And we were saying, we've got to find a way where wine is juicy and fruity and fragrant and ripe and delicious, and not sort of starved of ripeness and flavor, which so much of the sort of the barrel scrapings that we were being sent from Spain and France and Italy were like. Well, Australia was the place. Australia had this sunshine in a bottle. And so I just thought, I need a hero. You are my hero. And that followed. Then New Zealand followed, and Chile and South Africa and California, of course. But it was Australia really which began it. So people said, you must be Australian. You like Australian wine so much. I said, no, I like Australian wines because I'm English and we need Australian wines. That's why.
What a great story. You know, and that leads me to, I've often wondered this, and maybe you could expand a little further. When I think about the great British wine critics, I do imagine a style, having read them all, certainly when I was starting, and you're not at all like a typical British wine critic. How did you, I don't know, how did you develop such a different style? And weren't you afraid perhaps at one moment that, well, you wouldn't quite fit into that, you know, that tier of top-notch British writers and critics?
I didn't fit in then. I don't fit in now. I mean, when I started wine writing, the so-called aristocracy of wine, the toffee-nosed top end of wine, absolutely loathed what I did. And frankly, some of them still do. I still, to this day, hear sort of snibby, disdainful remarks, but you and your fruit in wines and all this kind of thing. And you just think, oh, off you go back to your cobwebby old corner and your dirty old pinstripe suit and your hair combed on the left-hand side and fried egg on your bow tie. This is a different world that we've got now. But when I started, I wasn't trying to be a wine critic. I'm still not a wine critic. I mean, I judge wines and I make my decisions about wines. But I think to this day, I don't think I've ever published a mark. I don't think I've ever published a mark. I think if my writing doesn't tell you what the wine's like, then go and get someone else. There's lots of people who will give you marks. Don't come to me for a mark. And I think the reason is, I was iconoclastic when I started. I meant to be. And I used to be continually hauled over the coals because of my use of English. And I found myself saying, I've got a very good degree from a very good university. I know how to write English. I don't happen to choose to write it like you guys and you girls are writing it. And I want to write it different. I want to invent words. If I think there's a wine is schmudly, well, then I want to put that it's schmudly, which schmuddles my brain. Now that's not a word.
That's happened to me too.
Schmuddles my brain. You probably get some ideas what kind of wine it was. And editors keep pulling these words out and keep saying you can't keep using the number of hyphens and dashes that were pulled out, saying you can't write like that. And what I do when I'm writing, I sit here at my desk and I'm afraid I'm not afraid. That's how I write my books. And to this day, this latest book of mine is 2.25 million words long, every single one written by hand. But I talk to myself all the time. I say here, if I write this sentence, I've been banging the drum about preparing for climate change for an awfully long time. I'm saying I've been banging the drum. Yeah, that's right. Banging the drum. I'm again writing away. I suspect for blah, blah, blah. And I'm writing and I'm talking and I'm writing and I'm talking. And that's why I need silence. I need to be in my own world when I'm writing, because I'm talking all the time. And if it doesn't sound right to me talking to myself, I think then it won't read right for the people who are going to read it. So I don't regard myself as a wine writer. I love wine and I get involved in a lot of wine, but I try to think of myself as a writer.
Yes. Well, and let's talk about that for a moment, because you also have a very distinguished career as an actor. Was acting your first love, and then you began to write? Did it happen the other way around? Did it happen simultaneously? How are those two ideas connected?
I think they're all simultaneous, because they're all about trying to avoid growing up. And I used to write a lot. I used to have a rock and roll band, and I used to write the songs for that. I wrote a whole sheaf of poetry by the time I was 19, 20. And I was terrified of having to wear a suit. The thing that frightened me most of all was somebody saying, childhood is over, adolescence is over, youth is over. I thought the moment I put a suit on and went into a 9 o'clock office job, youth was gone. And as far as I was concerned, if youth is gone, life is gone. And so what it was all kinds of ways to try and avoid getting a job, all kinds of ways to think, how can I hold on to this agelessness? How can I be classless? How can I be ageless? How can I avoid responsibilities? How can I be the Shakespeare's eternal outsider, that traveling player, that vagabond, that rogue, that artless varlet? How can I be that person? And one of the ways when I was coming to the end of Oxford was I could act and I could sing. And I realized if I put my mind to it, I could become a professional actor. And I managed, on my very last show at Oxford, I was playing Toby Belch in Twelfth Night. Wonderful play, wonderful part to play, and a fabulous director called Patrick Garland. And during that show, I got 2 agents and I got 3 interviews at the Royal Shakespeare Company and the National Theatre, but I also got a whole year's work at Northampton Repertory Theatre. And this was an ancient fortnightly repertory theatre. I had 50 weeks work there. I played 25 different roles in 50 weeks. My age range was from 75 to 16. And I just thought, youth doesn't have to finish. I've been paid for this. I'm a professional actor. Youth is with me. And I then got an opera scholarship, and I started doing that. And I actually realized I wasn't quite mature enough, to be honest, to really make a go of opera singing. I wasn't going to put my mind to it. But then while I was doing the opera scholarship, I got a pirate tape of Stephen Sondheim's Sweeney Todd. And I heard Stephen playing the piano and playing these songs, and I just thought, that's the kind of music I should be playing. That's what I should be singing. And I then realized that West End shows were what I should be doing, not trying to sing Mozart better than lots of other people. Lots of people were better than me, but I thought, I'm not sure other people are better than me when it stands up singing, there was a barber and his wife and she was beautiful, all those wonderful shows, or Evita I did, and the Mitford Girls and Sweeney Todd and stuff. Suddenly for a few years I understood what kind of singing I should be doing, but I was still writing a bit. But I think that the thing is, I started wine tasting at Oxford, to be honest, to try and get a girlfriend. I thought it might be a girlfriend. It didn't. It was in terms of getting a girlfriend, it was a complete flop. But in terms of, because I just thought it'd make me feel look sophisticated and swanky and irresistible. It did not. I took 4 girls to tastings my first term. No, not one of them spoke to me again. Not once.
Hey, it would have worked for an American woman. I know it would have, because we don't have, we don't have like the Oxford wine tasting team, of which you were the captain, right?
Yeah, because I gave up trying to get a girlfriend and thought this wine thing is really interesting. I'll just get more interested in the wine, and that's where I started understanding flavors. My first wine tasting, gosh, Francesca was his name. Poor old Francesca. She never spoke to me again. But well, hey, she was green from top to bottom. I mean, I should have known she's not going to enjoy wine tasting. She had green hair and she had green sequins all over her face, and she had a very tight green top, a tiny green leather skirt, and the rest of her, which was frankly most of her, was covered in green body paint. So I said, "Would you like to come to a wine tasting?" I should have thought, this is not going to work. You are not a wine tasting kind of person. Anyway, we went. It was complete disaster, and she left before the end of the tasting, flounced out. Don't blame her. But I remember it was a Bordeaux tasting, and I remember that last wine. They'd obviously decided to bring something old out for the youngsters to give them fun. Chateau Léoville Barton, 1962. And to this, as soon as I mentioned that name, the smells are coming back into my nostrils. This amazing aroma of cigar box and cedar wood and pencil graphite, and then I tasted the wine, and it was as bone dry as any wine could be, and yet it had a piercing kind of blackcurrant cassis flavor, it was so dry. It was as though a dragon had sucked all the sweetness out of the fruit and yet left the essence of the fruit, wrapped it in cedar wood, wrapped it with some Havana cigar leaf, given it to me and said, "Now, beat that if you can." It was as though the gods of wine had thrown down the gauntlet and said, "This is what wine's all about. Now, this is your first tasting. Are you going to get more interested or not?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And I did realize one of the things that I think lots of people are better wine tasters than me, but I can put words to flavors.
Yes, you can.
It's not easy to do. And a lot of our friends, and our mutual friends probably, you can see them thinking, "Oh God, what kind of word haven't I used recently? Where's my thesaurus when I need it? Oh, black truffles. They'll do. Oh, and blackberries, truffles. No, black chocolate. Oh, black tar. Oh, never mind. I'll put down earth." And, you just think an awful lot of wines don't taste of half the things that we say they do, and our colleagues say that they do. But you've got to fill a column, and you've got to say, actually, this is pretty similar to the one before, and the one before, and the one before, but I've got to make them all feel different. It's like an awful lot of wines don't really deserve a great deal of difference in mark if you are marking. It's really difficult if you're a wine marker, because people have come to expect a wine which is any good to get 90 points.
Yes.
Well, if I was at university, if I was at Stanford or if I was at Oxford and I got 90 points out of 100 in my exams, the professors would have me on their shoulders, parading me around the quadrant. Points out of 100 is a fantastically good score in ordinary life, but in wine it just says, "Oh, the wine's pretty good." And now in 95 points is 95 points out of 100. If 100 is perfection, 95 is so close to perfection that you think, "Gosh, this must be absolutely thrilling and memorable." No, it's just very good. Very good. Like dozens of other wines. Yeah, it's just very good. Because if I only give it 89, people aren't going to buy it. And also, right, as you know, in terms of websites and things, that's the members of the public, they sort of migrate towards the more optimistic websites, the ones which give higher marks to more wines. If you've got, and there are examples of 1 or 2 tremendous writers on Burgundy, for instance, who resolutely won't be drawn into mark inflation, and they lose followers. And you think, but you're the best person in Burgundy, but you're losing followers. Why? Because you say this is very nice wine, but it's only worth 89, and your other people are giving it 93.
I'm waiting for someone to give a score of 105. I mean, you know.
Well, like Spinal Tap, we need to bring Spinal Tap back. Well, 10 out of 11. That's what we need. 10 out of 11.
Exactly. But you know,
11 out of 10. 10 out of 11 is nothing. We need 11 out of 10. Yeah,
you're so right, though, because one of the, you know, if you're a writer, as we both are, you know, you agonize over, you're there talking to yourself. I talk to myself, by the way, too. And finally, you try and paint a picture with words to capture a very fleeting and difficult idea. And then you give a wine a score. And so you give people the ability to not read what you've just agonized over.
Absolutely.
It's an odd thing.
I sympathize with Robert Parker, because I think that, you know, things went a bit awry with Robert in the later years. But when he started out, he was fantastically important. He did an enormous amount of good. And he wrote really good stuff. And he used to say, I can't bear this. No one reads what I write. They just look for my score. And he was right. I've still got a lot of Robert Parker stuff up here. And sometimes I get it out and think, I wonder what Robert Parker thought about Chateau Pichon-Baron in the 1990s, or what he thought about those Chateau Montelena or Diamond Creek or something in the end of the 80s. And he's absolutely fascinating the way he writes about them. He was really good.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
And it is difficult to get this. Our sense of taste is our original sense. It's the one we had at the top of our spinal cortex when we came out of the primordial swamp. We couldn't see anything, we couldn't hear anything, we couldn't feel, but we could smell. And here we are, millions of years later, trying to put our most recent bit of our brain, the bit of our brain that manages to use language and to use writing. It's incredibly recent development in our brain. We're trying to put this incredibly new bit of our brain to have a conversation with the most fundamental piece of our sensory equipment, the one that is affected by emotion, the one that is affected by memory. These are the things that the sense of smell does emotion and memory better than anything.
Absolutely.
You think, it's having this effect on me, but can I get a word? There isn't a word. It's something which is, it's all these millions of tiny traumas that we have in our life, especially in our childhood and in our teenage years. They're all in there. And suddenly we can't remember them with words, but that
feel them.
Sense of smell will periodically just go.
Yeah. Oz, I want to ask you about a couple of questions about your process of writing, because as you know, as someone who has written one book, although I'm on the third edition of it, I mean, I look at your output. You've written, like, oh my God, 10 very important books, very solid books, not something you toss off on a weekend. Like, do you sleep? Like, how do you do this? Yeah, just how do you generate so much creativity?
Spend about a year fretting about it, and saying to your publisher, oh, no, I don't want to do it, and a year refusing to answer the door in case it's your editor. And sometimes I used to come to California and spend 2 or 3 weeks at a time in California to avoid my publisher and avoid my editor, so they didn't know where I was, to try and stop me writing another book. But eventually I have to say, okay, I'm not going to do much wine tasting in the next few months. I'm not going to see much of my friends. I'm not going to play tennis as much as I'd like to. I won't be going to the theatre much. And I sit, you know, I'm at the middle. This is where I'm sitting. That's the process of writing for me today. I need to go off by myself. And when I do that, and so long as I'm reasonably fit and happy when I'm doing it, because you can get quite unhappy when you're writing, and you can get quite lonely when you're writing. It's a lonely business, writing. But if I'm in a good place, and I can get myself started. Some days you can't. Some days I can't get anything out. Eventually, when you wasted most of a day doing that, the best thing to do is to shut your books, go to the cinema, go to the pub, go for a swim, but get out. Because after all, my study here, which I love dearly, it can be a jail, particularly. It can be a jail. But when I'm actually writing, and when I can feel it, the voice coming, I can write 5,000 words in a day, 6,000 words in a day.
Yeah.
And also discard another couple of thousand words. But on the whole, what happens is, and this latest book, the Oz Clarke, what's it called? I can't remember what my books are called anymore.
Global Wine Companion.
Oh yeah, I'll just show it you. There you are. There you are.
There we go.
Handsome fellow on the front. But when I finally decide to write, it's normally that just a single draft, and I change tiny bits. I write double space, so if there's something I want, I can just change. But
and by hand, by hand,
that, you know, that's the finger that suffers most. You can see the sort of rough on that finger, all by hand. But it's I think I've been mulling it. The thing about this Oz Clarke on Wine book, which is probably a book I've been thinking about for, I don't know, 10 or 20 years.
Yeah.
Sometimes it gets longer. You think, I've got to write it this year, otherwise it'll be another 50 pages, and in 5 years' time it'll be another 150 pages, and people won't be able to carry it. There's too much in it. And so eventually, when I sat down to write, I remember talking to my editor, and I said, I'm going to have to do so much research. And she said, no, you're not. She said, it's not in your head. I don't want to read it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's in your head.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes,
so
but you know, I want to say, though, that you are so unusual in this way, because it's almost as if you have the capacity to completely turn the binoculars around. On the one hand, you act and you're very, you know, you're dramatic and you're expressive and you're really out there and in front of people. And then you can turn these binoculars around and be very solitary, sequester yourself away for weeks or months at a time, talk only to yourself, with the occasional run out to the pub or the swimming pool. But that's an incredible ability to keep turning those binoculars of yourself around.
Well, because when I write, I have to, if I'm every now and then, I think this is a solitary, lonely, introverted piece of writing I'm feeling coming on, and therefore I write it as though I'm in a hermit's cave. But mostly, I want to write it as though I'm excitedly talking to a few friends of mine over the third bottle of wine. But I think it might be to do, I mean, I'm not an astrologer. Is that the word? Astrologer? Yeah. But I am a Gemini. And the Gemini are the twins. And I think I'm a pretty typical Gemini. That I'm shy and gregarious. I'm introverted and I'm extroverted. I'm lazy and I'm hardworking. I'm imaginative and dull. I'm indulgent and ascetic. I'm amazed at how often I can just see the two sides of myself, and then try and make sure that the less attractive side doesn't come out too often, or the less effective side doesn't. Some days, you know, I have, you know, I've got the carpe diem message there, which to me means don't waste the day. Seize it is one way, saying seize the day, carpe diem. Yeah, seize the day, but to me, it's don't waste the day. The worst sort of days for me are not the ones when I made a mess of things and tried something that didn't work and came home with my tail between my legs. That happens. The worst days of these precious days, of which we have so few on this earth, when I did bugger all and I just never got going. I just lazed about. I just read the newspaper again. I just made myself another cup of coffee. I just come up to 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and you say to yourself, you were supposed to do things today. You did nothing. You've wasted one more precious day, which will never come back. Now go to bed and don't do it again tomorrow.
Yeah. Is that the advice that you would give to a young writer? I'm curious, not to waste the day, or what kind of advice would you give to a young writer?
Certainly, I'd give that to everybody. Don't waste the day. It's never coming back. That precious, precious day is never coming back. I would also say, it depends what kind of writer we're talking about, but I would say typically to a writer, tell us about your life. Tell us about your experiences, your dreams, your aspirations, if I'm writing about rocket science, or if I'm writing about travel, or if I'm writing about a steam railway, or if I'm writing about some wine, what does it mean to me? Because if you tell the audience what it means to you, there's a reasonable chance the audience will say, that's really interesting. And if that's your view, I'm interested, like you and me talking. Don't write this book and say, don't use the passive tense. If you use the active tense, don't use 6 words when 4 will do. Don't use things like one might. Say, I might. And if the editor says, there's a bit too much I in this, say, yeah, that's because it's my book.
My name's on the cover, right?
On the cover. And I think the audience, if they're going to buy this book, want to know about what I think. Not about, you might want to do this. Well, okay, but what about I might want to do this? And if I say you, not in the generic term of you can always do this or you can always that. When I use the word you, I want the audience to think that he's talking to me. He's talking to me, and I'm the you he's talking to, not some kind of generic you.
I so agree. You know, I sort of grew up reading the not you British wine writers. And when I sat down to begin to write the Wine Bible, which the first one I started in 1990, took 10 years, I talked it. I imagined a woman, I still imagine this same woman who doesn't know a lot about wine, but she's a smart person. And I told her the whole story. And this idea that you've so beautifully explained of writing in an intimate way to your reader, to write as if you were having a conversation, is one of the most difficult types of writing to do. Because anybody can write something sort of stilted and dripping with too many adjectives. But to write very purely, very directly, very emotionally to your reader, good for you, Oz. That's tough writing.
It's what I try to do. And when I get it right and I read it back, my heart beats faster, my spirit warms, and sometimes I burst out laughing with pleasure. If I've done something really good, I burst out laughing and just say, that is good.
Damn it, I did it.
Good. And now and then, it doesn't happen all that often, but now and then I just say, you couldn't have written that better. Normally I'm saying, I could have written it better, but sometimes you just think, damn, you nailed it.
Yeah. You know, I want to ask you, and I think I might know the answer to this, but I want to hear you say it. So many of yours and my colleagues, but especially there in Great Britain, are MWs. They got a Master's of Wine. You did not. Why was that?
Never had time initially, always doing other stuff. It's a serious exam, takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort. I sometimes used to think I wanted to try and get an NW, not necessarily to have it, but to do all the learning. Because I think as I've got older, I've enjoyed learning much more. University lectures are completely wasted on me. I mean, I skipped most of them. Wasn't remotely ready to listen and draw in. There's amazing wisdom that I was being offered by these professors all over the place. I would have liked to have done. I would like to have done the learning. Um, I I suppose I'd like to have MW after my name. Who wouldn't? Um, it's never been relevant to what I do. It might almost get in the way. I might actually end up knowing too much about stuff, and knowing too much about stuff is not useful to me if it gets in the way of me being clear and explicit and friendly and inviting to my audience. And certainly, I mean, I do master classes and things, but I often say to people with asking me to do master classes, I'm not the expert. There's people who know far more than I do about this. Get them, but they say, no, we want you to do it. And I think, okay, if you really want me to do it, it's because you want someone who's not necessarily the expert, but who'll come up with some ideas and who'll have an opinion and who will enjoy talking to an audience, because the audience is your drug. It is your reward. And one of the great problems with this Zoomy period we've now just about to enter our third year in, is you don't get your beautiful dose of people. You don't get the exhilaration of smiling faces, of live laughter, of questions that come from a person, and applause and timing. You think, I'm getting through, or I'm not getting through. Okay, change direction. That's not working. Move over there. All these things, which for a live audience, I feed on that. And last couple of years it has been quite tough on that.
Yeah.
Be better at it than I am. I do it, but I do like the audience, and the MW is nothing about audiences at all. It's the MW expertise is a delightful thing which I would like to have, but is probably completely unnecessary for the kind of stuff that I do.
Yeah, I agree. Last question, Oz. Tell us something about yourself that would surprise most people to learn.
I really do like steam trains.
Okay.
Really do. The kind of fantasy dreams I have is standing on the footplate of an old steam train, throwing coal into a fire. So don't tell all your ecologically minded friends that. I do concerts. I do 10 concerts a year to this day, with a group called the Harmonico Consort, which we do Baroque music with wine. We make the audience drink wine. If they don't drink wine, we'll get security to throw them out. And we get belly laughs out of Baroque music. And we do it all over Britain at the festivals. We've just got a new show, which we've just done the premiere of, called Gin and Phonic, which is all about gin and all about gin and music. And it means that you've got Baroque Billie Holiday, you've got Baroque Noel Coward, as well as Baroque Monteverdi and all the others, because you can't talk about gin. You look at the Dutch. Okay, we're going to have lots of Dutch music. Well, you look at the Dutch Baroque music and think, oh, I don't know. I don't want to sing and hear this stuff. And then you hear some Cole Porter or some Noel Coward or some Billie Holiday or some Dinah Washington or something. You say, that's what I need to sing. And then you say, fine. So how can a Baroque cello and a Baroque violin and a lute do Billie Holiday? Well, we'll soon find out, and we do. So I do those. I like golf, actually. If you want,
I cannot imagine you on a golf course. You following a little white ball around? I don't know. Somehow it doesn't stack up.
No, it depends how you approach your golf. Again, I don't care whether I win or lose a match. I like playing them by myself, and the reason is that with golf, it's not like playing tennis. You're always playing against someone. Playing basketball, you're always thinking, why aren't I 6'4"? Why can't I ever get the ball in the net? Every time you set up against this funny little white ball, it is just you.
No.
And the next shot that you play could be greater than Tiger Woods's best effort.
Mm.
And it probably won't be. So you then go and find your ball and say, okay, this shot can be as good a shot as Jack Nicklaus could ever have played out of this rough. And it probably won't be. But every single time that a golfer addresses that ball, he could play the greatest shot of his life and as good a shot as ever been played. Doesn't happen normally, but I reckon every time I play a round of golf, sometimes I play half a dozen shots. I think, oh, wow. Sometimes I play one. If you're having a bad round of golf and you have one superb shot, the adrenaline floods back through you and you just think, that's why I play this game.
Wow. Well, the book is Oz Clarke on Wine, Your Global Wine Companion. And maybe, Oz, this is the best one yet, but it's hard to know because I know much more is going to continue to come from you because we now know you're not a waster of days. But thank you so much for talking with us on People to Know today. It's just been, I feel like you've just lit up the Napa Valley here with your wisdom and your wit and your creativity. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. And the sooner I can get back over again, the happier I will be.
The gates of Napa Valley are open, my friend. All right. And if you've been watching, our complete interview with Oz Clarke is on winespeed.com's People to Know page. Please check it out. I know you're going to like it. I'm Karen MacNeil.